Hey everyone, and welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
I am.
Today we're tackling a story that's, well, it's both unsettling and fascinating at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
It's the story of Jesus and those demon-possessed men from the region of the Gerasenes.
Sometimes called the Gadarenes.
Right, Gadarenes. It's one of those stories that has just always kind of stuck with me.
It's intriguing.
Yeah, and it's raised so many questions for scholars over the centuries. Like, what's the symbolism?
It's a historical context.
Exactly. And the big one, why did those demons beg Jesus to send them into a herd of pigs? I mean, wouldn't that be a worse fate?
It's a great question. And to understand that, we need to look at where this story takes place.
Okay, so set the scene for us. Where are we?
We're in the Decapolis. It's a region with a predominantly Gentile population.
Gentile, meaning not Jewish.
Right. And that's really important because in Jewish tradition, pigs are considered unclean.
So right from the start, we have this kind of clash of cultures.
Exactly. A tension between the spiritual and the material world.
And then you have these two men. The text really emphasizes how violent and terrifying they were.
Yeah, so much so that people were afraid to even go near the area where they lived.
It's like you can almost feel the grip that this evil force had on them and the fear it inspired in the community.
It's a powerful image, and it's important to note where this story fits into the bigger picture of Jesus' ministry.
Oh, good point.
It comes right after he calms a storm and heals a paralytic. So we're seeing this kind of pattern, right? This symbolic victory over the strongholds of Satan.
Both in the physical and spiritual realm.
Exactly.
Then there's that part where the demons instantly recognize Jesus as the Son of God. It's, it's kind of ironic, isn't it?
How so?
Well, even the disciples were still struggling to fully grasp that concept at this point.
That's true. It's like these evil beings had a clearer understanding of Jesus' divinity than his own followers.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes fear or even our own preconceived notions can blind us to the truth.
Absolutely. And then there's that chilling question they ask, have you come here to torment us before the appointed time?
It must send shivers down your spine. What do you think they meant by that?
Well, it introduces some pretty complex theological ideas, like the idea of predetermined judgment,
Like God has a plan and they're terrified of what that plan holds for them.
Exactly. They know their time is limited and they seem to be desperately trying to avoid their ultimate fate.
Okay, so let's get to the pigs. Why would they beg Jesus to be sent into them? I mean, come on, wouldn't that be terrible?
Right. It's a really strange request, and there are a few different ways to interpret it. One idea is that they were so desperate to avoid their eternal punishment, they'd take any earthly vessel.
Even an unclean animal like a pig.
Even a pig. Another possibility is that they were trying to, sabotage Jesus' ministry.
Oh, I see. Cause chaos and maybe turn the community against him.
Right. Imagine the economic damage caused by a whole herd of pigs suddenly going crazy and drowning themselves in the sea.
That would definitely cause some uproar. So maybe the demons were being strategic.
It's possible. And then there's a third interpretation, which is pretty ironic.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, this view suggests that by entering the pigs and causing their destruction, the demons actually end up fulfilling Jesus's purposes, even though unintentionally.
Whoa, how so?
Because they freed the men from their torment and also exposed the townspeople's misplaced priorities. The people were more upset about their lost pigs than they were about two human beings who were just miraculously healed.
Wow, that's a powerful point. Their values were totally skewed.
Right. They cared more about their material possessions than they did about human life.
And it's really important to note that just because Jesus allowed the demons to enter the pigs doesn't mean he endorsed their actions.
Absolutely. He allows evil to play its part, but ultimately he's working towards a greater good.
And that raises some big questions, doesn't it, about free will and divine intervention?
Definitely. It's a complex interplay. It's not that God is controlling every little thing, but more like he's nudging things in a certain direction.
Makes you think about how much control we really have over our own lives.
Oh, sure.
This whole incident with the pigs seems to highlight a tension that pops up throughout the Bible. This struggle between what we want and what God wants for us.
Yeah, that's a constant theme.
And that tension is definitely something we can all relate to, even today, right?
Absolutely. The people of Gadara, with their pig-based economy, are a prime example.
They chose their worldly interests over this incredible encounter with the divine.
And it makes you wonder, what are the pigs in our own lives? What are we clinging to that might be hindering our spiritual growth?
Maybe it's material possessions, or maybe it's something less tangible, like, I don't know, a grudge we've been holding on to, or a fear that's keeping us from taking a risk.
It's different for everyone,
Yeah.
but it's always worth asking ourselves that question.
It's definitely food for thought.
Yeah.
So the townspeople of Gadara, they basically reject Jesus. But the story doesn't end there, does it? What happens next?
Well, despite their rejection, something remarkable happens. The townspeople are so focused on their financial losses, like they completely missed the miracle that just happened.
It's a pretty stark contrast, isn't it? Like,
Mm.
their priorities are all about material wealth, and they don't even seem to care about these guys' spiritual well-being.
Yeah. It's like they were clinging to their way of life, clinging to those pigs so tightly that they couldn't even see the possibility of something greater.
Something truly liberating, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of sad. Makes you wonder if we ever do the same thing.
Oh, for sure. We all get caught up in our own stuff sometimes. It's human nature.
Holding on to the familiar, even when it's not really serving us anymore.
Absolutely. And this tension between earthly desires and, an obedience to God, it's something we see over and over again in the Bible.
Oh, totally. Like, what about that passage in Matthew 6, I think it's verses 19 to 24, where Jesus talks about serving two masters?
Yeah.
God and riches, right? Can't serve both.
You got it. That's a classic struggle, that pull between what we want and what we know is right.
And the people of Gadara, they become this perfect example of that, don't they? They choose their worldly interests over this incredible chance to connect with something bigger than themselves.
It's like they miss the whole point. And it really makes you think, what are the pegs in our own lives? What are we clinging to that might be keeping us from experiencing real freedom, real growth?
I know what you mean. For some people, it might be material possessions.
Right. Mm.
For others, it could be something a lot less tangible, like maybe holding on to a grudge from the past.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Or maybe it's fear that keeps us from taking that leap of faith.
Yeah, those are great examples. And it's funny how the things that we think are making us feel secure, those are often the things that end up holding us back the most.
It's so true. And this story really challenges us to look at those things that we're holding on to,
Mm-hmm.
Really ask ourselves, are they worth it? Are they helping us or hurting us? It's a tough question, but it's worth asking.
Definitely. And it's interesting that this isn't just a story about Jewish people rejecting Jesus.
What do you mean?
Well, here you have Gentiles, people from a totally different background, rejecting him too. And it's not because of his religious teachings, it's because of their money.
Their economic interests.
Oh, I see.
It really highlights the fact that his message wasn't just for one specific group.
Exactly. It's for everyone. And the resistance to his teachings, that can come from anywhere,
No matter your culture or your background.
Exactly. It's a universal struggle. And we see this theme echo throughout the New Testament.
Like how?
Well, think about the book of Acts. You see the gospel spreading way beyond those early Jewish communities, reaching all sorts of different people.
Right.
And in Romans, Paul, he urges Christians to not conform to the patterns of the world,
To be transformed by the renewing of their minds. Ah, that's a good one. It's about breaking free from our own limited thinking,
Yes. Aligning ourselves with God's will. That's what it's all about. And that message of transformation and renewal, of choosing faith over fear and letting go of those worldly attachments.
That's really at the heart of it all, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But it's bigger than just becoming a Christian, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
about recognizing that tension that exists within all of us, that pull between what we want and what we know is right.
That pull between the familiar and the unknown. Yeah, that's something we all grapple with, whether we're religious or not.
It's part of the human experience, this
Hmm.
struggle to break free from the things that hold us back and really step into a life of greater freedom and purpose.
It's about becoming who we were meant to be. And despite the town rejecting Jesus, the story doesn't end there. What happens to the guy who was healed?
Yeah. What happens to him?
Well, Jesus gives him a mission. He tells him to go back to his people and tell them what happened, to tell them what God did for him.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. I mean, these people just showed how little they cared about him, and yet Jesus still wants him to be a witness to them. That's really something else.
It really is. It speaks volumes about the power of personal testimony.
Yeah. Here's this guy who was so tormented and so rejected by his own community, and now he becomes this living example of God's love and grace. Proof that even the most broken parts of us can be healed.
Exactly. It's like a seed being planted in what seems like pretty barren ground.
You never know what might take root, right?
Yeah.
Even if those townspeople were mostly worried about their pigs, maybe, just maybe, some of them heard his story and it made them think, Maybe it even changed their hearts.
It's possible. That's the incredible thing about hope and healing. It can find its way through even the toughest obstacles.
Sometimes the most unlikely people can become the most powerful messengers. So we've covered a lot of ground today. We talked about the symbolism of those pigs, the clash between spiritual values and material wealth.
And we even saw some early hints of Jesus' mission to the Gentiles.
Right, right. As we wrap up this deep dive, what do you think is the core message here? What can we take away from this story?
At the end of the day, it's about making a choice. Do we cling to our pigs, those worldly things that are holding us back? Or do we choose freedom, the freedom that comes with faith and compassion?
And that choice, that's something we face every day, isn't it?
Yeah.
No matter who we are or what we believe, it's not just some ancient story about demons and pigs.
It's about recognizing those pigs in our own lives, the things that are keeping us from truly living, from being who we're meant to be.
Yeah. It's a tough question to ask ourselves, but it's so important. Well, that about wraps it up for this deep dive into the story of Jesus and the demon-possessed men. It's a story that challenges us, makes us think, and maybe even pushes us to take a good hard look at our own lives.
Thanks for joining us.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and keep seeking what truly matters.